Hi there, and welcome to another Live at 5. As you can see, I'm on my own today. Richard Smith is not here. Maybe having the wonderful Frankie join us. Um, and Richard is currently with Phil the Power Taylor, who is one of the world's greatest dance players. I think number one in the UK, definitely, maybe in the world. What he was, he's stopped doing that now, but he's now on a low carb diet. And Richard has been on the TV talking about the success of the low carb ketogenic way of eating, actually. So yeah. Happy to take questions. Normally there are some waiting for me, but there aren't at the moment, so that's fine. I'm just waiting for Frankie to join. So it might be a short one today, which isn't too bad because it's very hot. Here I have a little remote for my big Dyson fan, and I'm going to just make sure that that's going because it's already got really hot. Yeah, so apologies there for Richard not being here, but I'm sure he would love to. But like I say, it's just me, and Frankie should be coming any moment now. So I'm looking at my mobile because she said she's just getting her laptop. That's the message. Anyway, right. So 9th of July, we've got the live stream, 24-hour live stream, which we've got so many good guests coming on. Let's put that down the bottom there so you can see Dr. Chafee, Sean Baker, Kevin Stock, Judy Cho, Dr. Salt, Dr. Avadia, Zaldivar, Bronson Dant, Lily Kane, Bart Kay, Dr. Lisa, of course, Rachel Brown, Dr. Rachel Brown, Jen Unwin, possibly David Unwin, Robert Sykes, who's the keto savage, inventor of the keto brick, the composition consultant, that's Jonathan. We have Colt Milton from Superset Your Life, Serena Muzak from Carnivore Revolution. We now have Coach Emily, and delighted to meet you, Jennifer there. Natalie E. West has come on board since. So many, actually, so many people. So I need to update that little ticker there. Dr. Kiltz is doing the 4th hour. So that's good. Yes. So that's the 24-hour live stream. So a bit of a plug there for that. If you have, like I say, any questions, just put it in the comments. We'll catch those if that's okay. But this live stream might be a little bit quiet today because, as I say, Richard is not here. So if you have anything you want to talk about, carnivore related, ketogenic related, or anything at all, I just wanted to just go over a couple of things that have happened recently for me. Some brilliant coaching sessions. Some people, well, it might be just interesting, generally speaking, because some people have seen some miraculous results by following the Salisbury steak sort of diet, which is where you're avoiding all sorts of gristle and connective tissue, which is pretty interesting. I think in the 1800s there was a Dr. J.H. Salisbury, or it might be H.J. Salisbury. Anyway, it was in the 1800s, and he looked at nutrition. It ended up that in 1904, I think it was, the American Navy menu was all based on his research. And he found that when he looked at the absorption of meats and when he looked at other issues like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, things like this could be resolved by eating just meat, which I thought was pretty interesting, to be honest. But he found even better results when he cut out the connective tissue and the gristle. So that was great. I think that was one of the things. So let's have a look. We do have Mr. Richardson here. Hi, Stephen. I'm hoping Phil Taylor will come out of retirement and win the next World Championship this year. This will raise the awareness of low carb. Well, yeah, well, that's a bullseye. 180. Yeah, that's true. The more people in sports that do low carb, ketogenic, or carnivore, the better. So, firstly, thank you, Phil, for tuning in. Yeah, and I don't know if you just were listening, actually, Phil, about the stomach issue thing, because a lot of people do have problems with things like rendered fat. So that's when you cook meat, and the fat liquefies. Some people tip it back on, they put the ground beef onto the plate and then they tip that rendered fat, that hot fat, onto the plate. That can be problematic. But also this thing where there's more gristle in the minced beef, the ground beef, or there's possibly connective tissue in there. I mean, when I was at school, and I'll make no bones about this, no pun intended, I had a Saturday job in the market selling records. But before that, I'm just checking in to see what's happening with Frankie. Still not in, but anyway, okay, don't worry. Yeah, so I had a Saturday job, and I used to work selling records at Wembley Market and also in Gravesend Market. But before that, I worked in a butcher shop, which is really ironic. So I was 14 years old, and one of the roles that I had to play was making the sausages. And I can tell you that the sausages contained everything, eyes, bits and bobs from around the place. Everything went into the sausages. Huge, at that point, huge amounts of rusk as well. I didn't know about carnivore, and I didn't know about nutrition then. And I just assumed this was okay. So there was a lot of sort of rusk going into the sausages. This particular place was shut down by the health and safety many years later, which didn't surprise me when I found out about it. But anyway, I was doing this Saturday boy work, and also, the minced beef. Pretty much anything could go in there. So if you are very sensitive and you're finding there's problems, and you've taken out the mince, taken out the rendered fat, you're not doing that anymore, then you could consider trying to get your butcher to grind up the meat for you and take out the gristle and the connective tissue. So let's get Frankie in. So that's Frankie.
Hello. Hi.
Hello from the Kitchen Detox. Let me get rid of this from Phil. Hope that answered your question there, Phil. How are you today then?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm good. Bit rosy from being in the garden.
Oh, it's gorgeous, isn't it? I'm loving the sunshine.
Yeah, so am I. So, well, let's introduce you, Frankie. Tell the viewers what you do and what the Kitchen Detox is all about.
So, I'm Frankie. I am a nutritionist here in the UK. I advocate for primarily a carnivore diet, at the very least a ketogenic style diet. I specialise in thyroid conditions, having been born with quite a tricky one myself, and hormonal other hormonal issues. But I see a wide range of different people, and I absolutely love what I do. The Kitchen Detox is my baby. That's where it all began. So I sell superfood snacks, and I've actually just created some meat crisps for the UK, having missed the carnivore crisps. So so that is me.
What do you mean you've created? You've created some crisps. Are they going to be available to the public then?
Yeah, so they've just gone onto my website. I ran a little competition, so I sent out a few freebies just to get people's feedback, whether they were crunchy enough, and it was a total kind of experiment to get it right. And I did a bit of a naming competition. So Meat Crunchies have been born, and they're on my website for sale. And so they're grass-fed beef crisps.
Oh wow! Okay, so what's your website?
So it's thekitchendetox.com. That's where you find everything.
All right, okay. I'm just making you a little thekitchendetox.com. Right, okay. We'll do that. See if I can get that to save. Right, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah. I like that.
I was missing the missing the crunch, and I did order some carnivore crisps, but spent a small fortune trying to get them to the UK. So yeah,
this is just brilliant. Actually, what an entrepreneur! Because I didn't even know that. So yeah, genuinely quite surprised. So is it going to be?
So yeah.
Do you have an example packet to show people?
Well, I can run off and get you a packet, an example packet, if you want to see them.
Go for it, because we do have so many people saying about the carnivore crisps we miss out. So let's have a look.
Let me grab you a packet and you can have a little look.
So if anyone doubts this is live, you now know that it really genuinely is live and unscripted. I genuinely did not know about that. So we were just going to talk about carnivore. So let's go back to the comments, why Frankie's gone to get the crisps. I think that's rather exciting, actually. So Cammy's got, I have a problem with rendered fats. It's a bit of a problem when I'm supposed to not eat dairy. Can digest dairy fats very well, but I have thyroid antibodies. Yeah, I mean, dairy is such a tricky one, and I think the thing about like this Salisbury diet, for instance, is it's sort of like the lion diet. It's very very much an elimination sort of diet. So yeah, let's we'll come back to that. Let's look at the crisps then. Let's have a look.
So they come in these just little Sealy bags. I've ordered some more, actually. Just I'm funking up the packaging a little bit, but I'll show you an example of what they look like. So you get just like a lovely big fatty rind on there.
Wow.
Yeah. There's another big.
Do you have any idea of the price at the moment?
So they're £3.70 a bag. So I'm being swept away here.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. And it's anywhere in the UK people can order those, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, one of the competition winners was from the US. But obviously, if they're willing to pay packaging, I'm more than happy to send them. But yeah, that's my latest little venture.
yeah, it's really good. So what's been your main way of working recently then?
So mainly one-to-one. So I work with people, just coaching them, much like you, making sure that they're confident in the nutritional approach that I've suggested for them, which 9 times out of 10 is the carnivore approach. And I'm always aware that not everybody will be 100% willing to go full carnivore. So and I never want to cut those people off, and I don't like to be too dogmatic. So I just try and create as much of a meat-based diet as possible, but also just I want to create a family experience and make it really accessible for everybody. I really am passionate about children's health and getting them on board nice and early and inventing recipes for kids and stuff. So I really want to sort of take a little bit of a unique direction there, because I think there's a bit of a gap in terms of just working with families and making a lifestyle that's just conducive to that routine. Families that have a typical couple of children and husband, wife, when you're trying to do something on your own, sometimes it's just really overwhelming. And I think if you're cooking 3, 4, 5 dinners to please everybody and stuff like that, it just is unsustainable. So and under the bracket of what I do, it's not just nutrition. I look at kind of all kinds of lifestyle factors, so movement, getting aligned with your circadian rhythm, making sure you're addressing environmental toxins, all of those things. So it's a big package.
Yeah, it's great. It's really good. I'm very impressed with what you're doing, actually. And that's not my stuff. The crisps are so good. I think that.
Good. Thank you. You have to try some. I can send you some.
Yes. Yeah. I'll get a sample sent afterwards, and we'll do a taste test. Or we could do like the Pepsi challenge, where you could have different crisps and not know who's, and then do it anyway. Right. Yeah, I like the fact you're talking about children as well, because a few people talk about, you know, their children, can they be keto, can they be carnivore? But when they study actually infants or anyone actually that's never eaten meat before, and they look at the absorption of the meat, the studies show that 98% absorption happens for most people, and if you take out the gristle and the connective tissue, it becomes 100%. And that's what I was actually talking about before you got on, which was the Salisbury diet. There's a couple of
Yeah.
comments you might want to have a look at. So yeah, Cami put this on. She has a problem with rendered fats. It's a bit of a problem when I'm supposed to not eat dairy. She can digest dairy fats very well, but she has thyroid antibodies. I don't know. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
I struggle with rendered fats too, simply because I don't have a gallbladder. So anything that's, and by rendered fats, I'm usually talking about the hot fat that comes out, if I'm cooking minced beef or something, and I always have to tip away those rendered fats and use them again later. If I add butter on top, no issue at all. But the hot rendered fat causes me no end of problems. One, because I don't have a gallbladder, but two, I think generally in people with thyroid conditions, digestion can become a little bit sluggish. I've gone from using Tudka. Well, I started with full-on ox bile, and then I moved to Tudka, and gradually I've been able to completely remove those things now, so I'm absolutely fine. But I did have to go through that little process. It's almost like a retraining, and your biliary system can do amazing things. So you can create this sort of secondary gallbladder out of your biliary system, which is amazing. But you need to obviously be feeding your body correctly, and that's what the carnivore diet is is so wonderful at doing. So yeah, I think definitely steer away from the rendered fats. She's saying she can't. Did she say she can't eat dairy either?
Well, yes, it's very cryptic from Cami. Don't worry, she's been on before. It's a bit of a problem when I'm supposed to not eat dairy, so I'm assuming she knows she shouldn't eat dairy, but maybe does. But we're all like that. Nobody's perfect. I've just got an additional bit from her. Severe stress response when she goes low carb. Recently found a study that Dr. Berry linked to, and it said that people with hypothyroid issues have a 30 to 50% less ability to make glucose.
Yeah,
which sort of makes sense because you're hypo, so your thyroid hormones are low, and that's linked to your metabolic rate. And obviously, if your metabolic rate is running slow, which is one of the reasons it's a problem, then everything else is going to slow. So your ability to make glucose will go slow as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm assuming Cami is hypo with antibodies as well. But obviously, if you can remove the dairy, and I would suggest, Cami, if you're listening, going just full lion diet for sort of 6 weeks and seeing if that's enough to just really get on top of those antibodies, because it's fantastic. The carnivore diet for any kind of autoimmune condition is just awesome. And if you can get that under control, you may find that your symptoms just, you can get on top of your symptoms and then start to reintroduce foods. That's certainly what I had to do, was just go sort of very, very strict. Really listening to my menstrual cycle as well. I'm working with another lady who has found that she got incredibly anxious with prolonged ketosis, and that stress response was happening quite profoundly with her too. And she getting in alignment with her menstrual cycle, just switching out the protein and fat accordingly. I won't go into that too much, but it's a really wonderful thing to do for women who are suffering with any kind of anxiety. But yeah, I would really suggest doing that, going sort of very strict and then reintroducing foods.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the things. It's a bit of a, like she said, a catch-22. a lot of people think they don't sleep, but carbs before they go to bed sort it. But actually, that really isn't what's going on. It's the insulin response from the carbs, because you need insulin to enter your to basically light up your brain and make sure the blood-brain barrier is receiving everything you want, and things like tryptophan and or the amino acids are getting in there. So insulin isn't a bad guy. You do need a little bit of it. I find that people that can't sleep or have this anxiety, there is a bit more to it as well. I don't want to get too deep because it's a Sunday live at 5, but
Yeah.
when you look at carbohydrates and you look at people that are eating for pleasure rather than satisfaction, and I know, Cami, that I'm just doing this very broadly. This isn't personal advice. This is just talking about it for people that go, yeah, I can sort of relate to that. There's many different factors that could be causing the problem. So when you look at functional MRIs of the brain and you look at people that enjoy carbohydrates, you can actually see what addiction is. So there was a big headline about 3 or 4 years ago, which is a bit stupid, where it said sugar is 7 times more addictive than carbohydrate. Sugar is 7 times more addictive than cocaine. Okay, now this comes from the functional MRI. So this is a really basic, but in your brain you have neurons and there's synapses and there's receptors to send the signal on. All right. So what happens when these people were looked at? So whether it was an alcoholic, or whether it was somebody that smoked, whether it was somebody that had carbohydrates, we looked at the functional MRI and we saw the signal go up, and we saw that the receptors lit up and the brain lit up. And how sort of addiction works, this is very layman's, is the brain then can actually retract its receptors where it feels that you're eating the wrong things. So there is a sort of negative feedback that's saying this is bad for you. But of course, the addictive person then thinks, well, that signal's not going through. So instead of having 1 cigarette, I need to have 2, or instead of having 1 drink, I need to have 2. Instead of having 1 sugar in my tea, you need to have 2. And that's sort of like a very layman's idea about the functional and mechanical way that addiction works. So anxiety can be caused by your body saying, you need some carbohydrates. It's actually pleading with you to go and do the wrong thing. Nobody I've ever spoken to smokes for their health. Nobody I've ever spoken to has said to me, I drink because it's good for me. So an addictive personality, or there is a functional way we can see addiction in the brain. Mm-hmm. And it creates anxiety, which is why somebody wake up who's trying to not smoke, and the first thing they want to do is have a cigarette, and it will calm them down, but that's the body pushing you to have the cigarette. Same with the drink and all this. I'm not an expert in addiction. I did study it for my physiology honours degree, and I did actually get involved in the NHS cessation of smoking years ago. So the addictive brain works for different people. Some people have emotional triggers. Some people will have, like I say, just it's mechanistic. There are other things, outside influences, epigenetics. There's a lot going into it. But I think this thing where people say they can't sleep, so I need carbs, and it works. They just assume it's carbohydrates, but it could be your body actually winning because it's giving you that anxiety to have carbohydrates. It could be the insulin, making sure that your brain is receiving the amino acids and all the neurotransmitters it needs. So there's more than one way to actually tackle this. But I do also think looking at elimination can help. Then with this knowledge, hopefully, Cami, of like why you're so anxious, and you mentioned arrhythmias. It could be that when you've restricted, you've then cut down on your electrolytes some way, and your fluid balance could be out. So that's more.
I would suggest probably that even just under eating. I've definitely noticed that a lot of women underestimate the amount they actually need to just still keep those energy levels stable and keep anxiety at bay. If you are someone that has got a thyroid condition, that is going to be triggered by sort of slipping into ketosis. We tend to sort of start running on adrenaline as opposed to ketones when there's a complication with the thyroid. So that could be a scenario that's been happening. So yeah, see how you go just by increasing portion sizes and maybe having something small. Doesn't have to be carbohydrates at all, but just something small before bed. Yeah, and I think that's one of the things.
I'm not a big fan of people eating late at night if they say they suffer from acid reflux. I'm not saying it creates the acid reflux, but it feels like it does. But I think for most people, eating just before they go to sleep, that is okay if they're having trouble sleeping. It can help in many cases.
Exactly. Yes.
Yes. See, now, Frankie, you thought you were having a day off, didn't you? We don't normally get a big influx of questions like this, but so hello, Lola, lawyer. I don't know how you'd say that.
Yeah.
Hello. Was wondering if it's normal for urine to smell heavily like the meat you just ate, lying carnivore for 5 months, removed eggs, so mostly beef, bacon, butter, and down 35 pounds. So congratulations on the weight loss. Yes. Ammonia is a byproduct, or nitrogen is a byproduct of protein metabolization that can end up in your urine. So that can happen. Have you got any thoughts?
Yes, definitely. And I've experienced this one. I do think it's very important to stay hydrated, whatever nutritional approach you're taking. And I don't mean sort of you must drink 2 liters a day, but I think it's really, really important to just keep just good filtered water coming in. It doesn't have to be electrolytes added if you don't feel that you need them. Again, people can overdo it and they're having 2 sachets of like LMNT every day, and then that can create issues again with this imbalance. I actually had a very strange symptom. So I was experiencing some eye twitches from too much potassium. So yeah, I would just stay hydrated. It's amazing what that can do, just having a few extra glasses of water and just literally diluting that smell as well. You just that may be indicating that you're just not drinking enough water.
Yeah, I think from my sort of phlebotomist side of things, when you do a blood test, you do the blood urea nitrogen, or bun test, people call it. But I prefer to say blood urea nitrogen because people then understand what you're actually looking at. And it is your nitrogen content in your urea, which becomes your urine, which is currently being moved around in your blood. Simple as that. So when you eat more protein, you get more nitrogen, so your blood urea nitrogen reading goes up, and so does your creatinine. So that, which is a byproduct of protein metabolism. So the sort of standard duty of care is to then say, well, yes, is that a kidney issue? Yes, it flags up if it's possibly a kidney issue. That is used as a possible marker. Sean Baker actually did a video in the week about this very thing, and it is very common. I see it in lots of bloods. I've seen it in thousands of bloods, that if you eat more protein, your blood urea nitrogen goes up, and therefore the smell will go up a little bit. But if you have a cystatin C, and I don't tend to like the estimated GFR, which is the estimated glomerular filtration rate of your kidney, which is in the blood test, although that's normally looking good as well. I think the cystatin C test is even better because it's more of a direct measurement rather than estimated. And I've yet to find anybody, over 600 people I've coached at Carnivore, I've yet to see anybody have a kidney problem. Even those with a blood urea nitrogen reading that seems problematic. So, but let's be good people and say, if you're worried about your kidneys, go and speak to your healthcare provider. But I think the brilliant advice from Frankie there, just look at your hydration. Your urine should not be clear. It should not be dark. It should be sort of straw colored. If it's clear, believe it or not, you're probably drinking too much, and that can deplete your electrolytes. So try and aim for slightly straw colored, but make sure you're hydrated. Yeah, so that's my answer to that. I've got a question here. I have no idea how you're going to answer this, Frankie, so I'm going to put it straight up. So this is Matthew. He's a good lad. He's always on. Good evening. How many videos have you watched at the Carnivore Summit this week?
How many videos have I watched of the Carnivore Summit
this week? Yes.
I actually haven't watched any this week, but hello, Matthew. It was nice to meet you.
Yes, the Carnivore Summit, just for those that don't know, Judy Cho has had a whole week of interviews back to back, and she's curated this carnivore summit, which is amazing, with some brilliant guests, and you could
Yeah.
watch the summit live online, and it was completely free. The problem is the time shift, you see. So a lot of times, and I get this because I've got clients in America, when the videos are going out, I was asleep. So unless you unless you could stay up all night, I've watched a few of them. It's difficult as an influencer to get the time to watch the videos because you're making content. So I couldn't tell you how many I've watched, but I've tried to watch as much as I can and support it as much as I can because I think it's just brilliant. And Judy is coming on to our 24-hour live stream. So
amazing. That's so good. I think she's wonderful, and I've seen lots of things sort of talking about this carnivore summit, and you know, I'm always so envious of things that are going on in the US. Like, I'd love to do the keto con stuff and get involved, but like you say, it's a bit tricky here in the UK, isn't it? And
yeah. But that's why Richard and I are trying to do these live at 5 Sunday live streams, and we're doing the 24-hour live stream Sunday, the 9th of July, where we have got all those wonderful guests that I mentioned earlier. Maybe you missed it. Let me just have a look. So yeah, so this is we've got Dr. Chafee, Dr. Baker, Kevin Stock, Judy Cho, Dr. Sol, Avadia, who is a heart surgeon, Zaldivar, Bronson Dan. You see, these are all the American people. Lily Kane, Bart Kay, Dr. Lisa there. Great. I love Dr. Lisa, but there's many reasons for that. She was brilliant to me when I was at MeetRx. Dr. Rachel Brown, Jen Unwin, David Unwin, Keto Savage, composition consultant. Oh, wow. It's endless, you see?
amazing.
Yeah. So we're doing it, Matthew. We're trying to do it. So, and it's 24 hours, you see. So there's no excuse because all around the world, it'll be a good time for somebody somewhere. And it will be free and also online afterwards. So, yeah, right. Enough of that plug for that. So Cammie's just saying she didn't undereat, did use electrolytes, even did priming. I feel like it was probably because my body couldn't make its own needed glucose. When I added 2 tablespoons of honey, my pulse went down at once. Okay. Well, yeah, you see that when your body starts to need to make glucose, gluconeogenesis is quite energy. It takes a lot of energy, basically, and a lot of substrate. So once you did that, you eased the burden. So your pulse rate will go down. The reason your pulse goes up is because it's a delivery of glucose. And if it's low, then it's going to pump more blood. But anyway, yes. So 2 teaspoons of honey and the pulse went down. So that worked for you, which is good. And it is always very, level-headed. Not saying honey is good. Didn't want to eat it. It's disgusting. But it worked. So there you go.
Yeah. And I just think, if something is working for you, I think the worst thing you can do is feel guilty about it. I think attaching guilt to any food that is from nature is an incredibly unhealthy thing to do. It's all about finding what works for you. Possibly, I'd suggest just lowering, hopefully 2 teaspoons instead of 2 tablespoons, just because that's a huge amount of fructose all at once. And, you just don't want to fire up any other complications. But, I think if somebody's adding a handful of blueberries or if somebody's adding a bit of honey and it's not causing any other problems and you feel that you found your happy place, wonderful. I just think it's so fantastic to just become really in touch with your own health, measure all of those key markers of health like sleep, digestion, energy levels, mood, menstrual cycle, your strength, the ability to exercise, all these things, bowel movements, they're all such good markers of health. And you can become so in tune with just measuring progress and finding your little happy place.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is the thing. If something works for you and it isn't carnivore and it's the only thing that is working for you, then who are we to say don't do that? I mean, some people said to me recently, I really miss avocados. I'm going to add an avocado. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, because if 99.9% of your life is carnivore and not having an avocado is going to stop you being carnivore, then have the avocado, because the benefit of the rest of the time is going to be, I'm not saying avocados are bad, by the way, but just, it's a plant, or it's a fruit if you want to say it. But anyway, it's not necessarily bad if it works for you. So if honey works for you, like Frankie says, obviously you want to keep away from fructose, but it's worked. So Cammy's great with it. She doesn't have a mental addiction to carbs, can easily go without them, except for when the stress response happens, and that makes sense. Watch most of the speakers in the Carnivore Summit, and it's been a full-time job, and it has. Yeah, I mean, there's been lots of content, but here you are on this one. So obviously you are a real consumer of the carnivore stuff, which is good. And there's Matthew here.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
So I think this is one of the things that's interesting about the UK-based carnivores, and Richard, who normally does this, he's based in Wales, and we all know different influencers. So I actually mentioned him about Judy coming on, and he'd not even heard of Judy, because because there's this time shift. I mean, but then he's introduced me to a couple of people I didn't even know were low carb. So like an endurance cyclist we're having on, never heard of him before. So I think there's plenty of people out there that we need to still discover.
Absolutely, yeah.
So have you found anyone recently that has knocked your socks off and thought, oh, they need to get a bit more traction? Is there anyone?
Well, they're not actually strictly carnivore, but I have been blown away by and actually he's just become a very good friend of mine. His name is Soren Schiller, and he's a very interesting guy. His job title is professional best friend, which is very interesting, but he was diagnosed only very recently, but he's had ADHD for most of his life, had a very difficult childhood, but he has sort of found his inner child and is what you would call, I suppose, a modern day Viking. But he's doing wonderful things for mental health, brings people back very much to a sort of meat heavy diet. But yeah, it's just sort of, again, just talking about getting back in touch with our ancestry, and that's looking at everything, things like, learning to hunt, making sure that we're, addressing all of these relationships in our life. And but he has an amazing way of talking, and he is doing incredible things for lots of people. So and he's incredible. He's wonderful to look at. He's this big bearded Viking guy, and he's just come out with this new range of beard oil, natural beard oil. But interesting guy.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's nice to keep on top of who's up and coming and different opinions. I think I try to keep my eyes and ears open, like Cammy said there. Took time off from the summit to be here, and it is a full-time job because there's so much good information out there. So I think it's great, and also talk about spiritual side of things and grounding and all the things that aren't to do with nutrition has been particularly interesting for me.
Absolutely, I think that's it's getting that whole puzzle together to just create a lifestyle. Like I say, people can kind of miss out some of those vital things and think that they're following this wonderful carnivore diet, but things aren't quite coming into alignment, or there's a few little niggles. And oftentimes I will find out, that they haven't optimized their sleeping environment. They're not getting any sunlight in. They're not moving their body correctly. There's so many other things to consider, which can then make a carnivore diet work for you completely, because it's, food is a huge part of the picture, but it's not everything. So
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's that's golden, because we underestimate all the other things that are going on in our life. I know that I don't do so well if I don't sleep, which I haven't slept as well because of the heat. So a simple thing, I just put a fan in the room, and that was fine. It made a big difference. I can't open the windows because I live on a main road, and the traffic, and it's just diabolical. So so you have to look after your environment and do what you can do. So Cammy's just given us a little bit of more information. Vegan for 10 years, vegetarian for about 10 in the past. So I understand that I effed up my metabolism. And that's, I mean, that's a nice thing, because, it is a long journey for some people. And you get some lucky people go on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, and the carnivore diet has been like a magic wand, and they're telling everybody about it. 7 weeks in, it's the best ever, and I've dropped 20 pounds, and I'm off my metformin and all this sort of stuff, which is somebody I coached, and that's great. You should be shouting it from the rooftops. But the problem is, that gives the impression, because there's a lot of people, which is firstly a good thing, there's a lot of people that have these resolutions very quickly, because there's so much of that. Those that take longer feel a little bit disheartened. But I've also got people that I've coached that have taken a year to completely rid themselves of leg cramps. So it's not a magic wand, but I do say, on average, it seems to me that people clear up after 26 weeks plus or minus 6. That's about the average, but definitely there are longer term ones.
And I think that it's good to remember that, and Cammy's able to recognise that, she's spent a good 20 years of her life doing these things that possibly hindered her, damaged her metabolism or damaged other mechanisms within her body. And that's what we all need to keep in the back of our minds. If we're coming to carnivore as an adult, what have we been doing for 20, 30, 40 years? And, we just need to give our body time to heal. If we've damaged our body over that many years, we're going to equally need some time to undo that damage. And the body is an amazing thing. It's absolutely capable. But certainly it's not always a quick fix. But this is what I'm passionate about, the little ones, getting children and teenagers on board with really thinking about what they're putting in their bodies, and watching their parents probably fighting to get healthy is, I think some kids find that quite distressing. I know my children were always worried if mummy was unwell, or certainly if I had a bad day with my thyroid. My lovely son is very empathetic, so he was sort of like, "Oh, you okay, mum?" And but I think it's so important to just get these kids on board and show them how to come against this fierce advertising that is just directed at them so frequently. If you can start young, you just avoid so much, don't you? So
I mean, I had a brilliant interview a couple of days ago that will be out in a couple of weeks, and a really fabulous thing, and you might like this, Frankie, as well, talking about children. He came to carnivore at 36 years old, this guy, and he's got a couple of kids, and carnivore sort of changed his life. He lost contact with his son, but then when he recontacted his son was 24, I think, if I remember rightly, and he went carnivore because his dad was doing so well out of carnivore. And he said in the interview, so I was 36 when I came to carnivore, and I've done this time shift now because now I've got someone at 24 who's gone carnivore, and his son, so the son's son, so this guy's grandson, is going carnivore. And he's, obviously a junior, and he's doing, martial arts and showing real promise. So I think that's the thing. I'm 59, but I speak to people like that who is 36, and then they speak to someone who's 24, who they have kids, and they're 6 or 7, and they're looking at carnivore or cutting out all the carbs. And I just think this lovely sort of virtuous domino effect is just so good. I've got a really interesting question for you. You can take it first, or I can take it first. Do you want to have a look at that? Is that, and the reason I speak it out, by the way, is for people that listen on the podcast and can't see it. So Joseph has asked, is there any downside to taking very low dose vitamin C? Why are nearly all YouTube carnivore channels so purist and anti-supplement?
Wow, yeah, I'm happy to sort of address that question, because I work with a lovely lady. She has a very, very small line of supplements, but she was able to come off a whole host of antidepressants with the use of carnivore and vitamin C and niacin together. I'm not anti-supplement at all, and in fact, if you have compromised gut health, if you've had a long-term illness or autoimmune condition, there may be some things that you struggle to absorb even on the best carnivore diet. And I always think it's great to get sort of foundational blood tests done to really see where those holes are. There's no need to sort of start taking some blanket multivitamin and mineral, because I just think in a lot of cases those supplements do more harm than good. But having a liposomal vitamin C, that's shown to be very, very highly absorbed by the body and really effective. It's a great antioxidant. You could use it just, in the presence of when you're feeling a bit low. We all, even on carnivore, we're all subject to feeling a little bit groggy now and again. So you can just use that occasionally, or if you find that you are struggling to absorb certain nutrients from food, and vitamin C is one of them, then absolutely have it as a regular supplement in your routine. And I know that there's a huge push for a complete food approach. A lot of carnivores will say you do not need to supplement, and if you do need to supplement, that shows that you're not following the diet correctly or something. And I just think it's very misleading and confusing, and actually that isn't the case for everybody. Like I say, if you've been subject to an autoimmune condition, or you've got leaky gut, you can struggle to absorb some things. So
yeah, I mean, the question there is why. Let's do the second bit first. Why nearly all YouTube carnivore channels so purist and anti-supplement? I think it's because for most people, as Frankie just said, the diet is enough for most people. So I'm not teaching you to suck eggs, Joseph, by the way. But when you're transmitting and you're hoping 11,000 people or 111,000 people are going to watch something, you have to be quite broad to get as many people as you can. And in the main, 80% of the people watching probably don't need to supplement. So you're going to sort of talk to the 80% rather than the 20%. But I think most of the supplement talk, actually, when you listen to the nuance, most people will say there might be a role for this, there might be a role for a calcium or potassium or whatever. I think most of the influencers will say that in more extended conversation. I think if I was going to do a thing about diabetes and a 10-minute video, I probably wouldn't talk about supplements. I wouldn't talk about berberine as a possibility. Not saying that that's a good one, by the way, but I'm just using that as an example. I would talk about the carnivore diet and how that can help. When you look at vitamin C, there's quite compelling arguments as to we don't need vitamin C. And again, going back to phlebotomy, uric acid does a much better job as being an antioxidant than vitamin C does. And humans stopped their ability to store vitamin C en masse across the entire planet on every single continent at the same time. And when you look at, selective pressures of evolution, those sort of things don't happen unless there's a reason. So the shutting down of storing vitamin C happened. Then what's happened in the last 100 years is vitamin C is very similar to glucose, carbohydrate, and they compete for the same receptor. So I would say there's a lot more nuance to the discussion about vitamin C. I've yet to see any compelling evidence to take vitamin C, but I am also open to people that say, I've tried my vitamin C and it seems to improve things. So I don't think there's a downside if you are taking it and you've improved, because that's real experience. So simple as that, really. I'm rushing a little bit now because I've got to finish on the hour. So let's rattle through this. Hope that was all right, Joseph. So Matthew there's been suffering with long COVID since April Fool's Day 2020. No joke.
Wow.
I've been eating strict carnivore for 2 months. Mental health and fatigue has greatly improved. IBS better, but not fixed. What we just said, mate, it's all about patience, but that's really good to hear that.
Well done.
Big question, just quickly. Sorry, Frankie. Everyone's answering now. Would you say it's important to exclude dairy if a person has thyroid antibodies? And does that include butter? Many say that butter is still okay, but Georgia Eads says to exclude it as well. I will answer, then Frankie will. I just want to do a quick thing. Yes, butter is dairy, and it has odd chain fatty acids in it. And there are difficulties with that, which is why, not why, but that might be one of the reasons Georgia Eads says to exclude it. I definitely feel that for some people, excluding it, as we just said to Joseph, excluding it has made a difference for some people. So yeah, well, how do you feel, Frankie, about that question?
With every person I work with who's suffering with thyroid antibodies, then dairy, getting rid of dairy, all dairy products, including butter, does prove to be incredibly successful in reducing those antibodies and just making the individual feel a huge amount better quite quickly in most cases as well. And I know on a carnivore diet that then feels like it could be potentially very restrictive, but I think the positives really do outweigh the negatives when it comes to just, really being strict about that one. I find it incredibly effective eliminating dairy. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I think taking out dairy does help a lot of people. And then you've got the argument about raw dairy and pasteurized. But we're going to rattle on. Thank you for the questions. So this is Sunny from the US. It's sunny here, by the way. Thanks for the weekly live stream, Coach S. That's me. I'm learning new things from you and your guests every week. Yeah, well, Frankie is great. I'm working on lowering my A1C. Last test was 6.2, a great public service. That's a really nice thing to say. I will be doing a video about but I've already done one about the A1C, how it's not a particularly good metric when you're on carnivore, certainly over a period of time. And the more important metrics are your daily blood glucose readings and your fasted insulin and your C-peptide, because your A1C can go up if your red blood cells last longer, and that's actually what seems to happen on carnivore. So it gives you a false reading. But I am currently working on a video about that, but also talking about the fact that pre-diabetes is actually not a thing. I mean, it was a PR campaign. If you want to look this up, Richard Kahn from the American Diabetes Association in 2001 wanted something to scare people. All right. So you might be really interested in this, because what I just said was not enough, apparently. Fasted insulin, fasted glucose, blood glucose measurement wasn't catchy enough. So they literally invented the term pre-diabetes. Yep, absolutely invented it. And within the stroke of a pen in the NIH cafeteria, they come up with this PR word, pre-diabetes, and 74 million Americans were suddenly potential clients. All right. So well done. Your A1C, but I definitely think it's much more important to look at your daily blood glucose, C-peptide if you get blood tests, fasted glucose, C-peptide, fasting insulin. So that's that. This is great. So I think we've ran out of time because the people that are put stuff on there, I don't think we're going to have enough time to do that. So I want you to sort of wrap up, Frankie, how you feel it's gone today, and if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, it's lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this, and it's just fantastic what you're doing. And thank you everyone for your questions. Hopefully I've helped you a little bit on your way, but if not, I think both of us are extremely passionate about just helping people on their way. And if any of you feel lost, that's what I'm all about, is just working with you to help you get back on track or finely tune things. So yeah, do find me at the Kitchen Detox if you need me.
Brilliant. So I'm going to thank everyone for tuning in. It's our 55 minutes is up, and sorry we didn't get to everyone's comments, but if you tune in next week, then post your comment early and we'll get to it. Have a good day.
Have a good day. Take care.